Hello and welcome back to our channel, and welcome back to the liver flush series. And first of all, my apologies for the delay in getting this next part done. I'm not sure if this is going to be the final part or if there will be one more part where I talk about actual detoxification of the liver. I may not do that one because I've covered that in some other videos, but I do need to cover this part. This is actually how you do the liver flush, and so I want to just move right ahead into this, and I have some slides here that you can follow along with. And this is actually, I'm going to show you a demonstration of how I actually set up, how I mix the actual things that we use and how we actually do that. And so without further delay here, I just want to point out one thing in this first picture about preparation. If you'll please note how you can see that it's pointed out here what the gallbladder is in this little graphic. And note how the gallbladder hangs down. We'll come back to that in just a minute. Before we come back to that, though, I want to point out our disclaimer. And I have a similar disclaimer on our other videos. You need to do your own research on this topic. I'm just going to read this disclaimer here. This program is for informational purposes only. The listener and user of any information in this presentation takes full responsibility for the use or misuse of any and all information shared herein and in this entire series. So, and I'm going to give some cautions of people who really should not do this. There are some cases where this procedure should not be done, and I'm going to cover those, and I'm going to emphasize one in particular where you definitely do not need to do a liver flush. But that said, I don't know how many liver flushes I've done, but probably a couple dozen, maybe more than a couple dozen, and I have helped dozens of people do numerous liver flushes, and I have never had anyone who followed our directions, who followed the protocol, who has had a problem. And so from what we have seen in our experience, this is a safe procedure if you follow the directions. Okay, let's talk about stones a little bit more. I did talk about this in the other parts of the presentation, but as you can see in this slide here, stones in the biliary tree can either be soft or calcified. Typically the calcified stones are the ones that are in the gallbladder. And if you think back in your mind to that picture that I showed you at the beginning of how the gallbladder kind of tilts down just a little bit, imagine that full of calcified, even some stones can be as large as the end of your thumb, calcified stones, and your liver has to push those out. And you can see why it actually takes quite a bit to push those stones up and out of the gallbladder itself, let alone migrate down through the liver, and we'll talk about that more in just a minute. But that's why you can't think of the liver flush as a one-time fixes-it solution. It's not, because these stones have to soften, they have to migrate, and if you have a gallbladder full of these calcified stones, it's going to take a while to clear those out. So they can be, very difficult to remove. Malic acid is the component in green apples, tart cherries, these tart fruits. That's malic acid, and you can either the malic acid actually helps these stones to soften, and you can either do the juicing. A lot of people would prefer to do the apple juice. I think you drink apple juice for like a week before, or tart cherry juice. But we actually use malic acid. I think the brand that I personally use is by Nature's Life. It's a blue bottle, and I think the lid is yellow if I'm not mistaken. It's an 800 milligram capsule. It comes in vegetarian capsules, and we take that once a day for about a week. Now, if you've never done a liver flush, particularly if you're on an animal-based diet where you're eating meats, you're eating cheese and dairy and things like this, you might want to take that malic acid for considerably longer, up to 2 weeks before considering doing one of these flushes, because those stones can be quite hard. And there is my plug for the whole foods plant-based diet. I believe that that is the best diet for our body, the way our bodies were designed. So we typically, because we have done many of these liver flushes, we usually take the malic acid for about a week. 800 milligrams a day is what we do for that. Now, I want to give you a caution. If you have a stent in your bile ducts, do not do this liver flush. And here's why. We take the Epsom salt, we do other things like the grapefruit juice, the tangerine essential oil. All these things have a dilating effect on the bile ducts so that it's easier for these stones to pass. It causes them to relax and dilate. If you have a stent, just think about it. It's like having a hard fixed tube inside another tube, and if you're trying to pass a stone through that solid hard tube, and the stone is bigger than the diameter of that, that tube, it's not going to work. And so if you have these stents in your bile ducts, do not even think about doing this liver flush, because you're not going to be able to pass those stones through. But again, we have done, as you can see in this slide, we've done many stones. We've never had anybody, we've never ourselves experienced biliary colic, which is when you get one of these stones stuck. That's what happens. We have not had anyone to get a stone lodged. There's a first time for everything, but we believe that if you follow carefully and you use the precautions that we point out, that should not be an issue. But again, we can't be responsible because we don't know everything that you're dealing with. Now, I can tell you personally for myself, when I do a liver flush, I'm dealing with some health issues. I was diagnosed with Rocky Mountain spotted fever back in 2018, and I've had some other stuff happen too, some weird stuff. If you haven't seen some of our other videos and seen that, I've had mold toxicity. And the Rocky Mountain spotted fever, we recently learned, has been active in my body for 3 years now, and it triggered an autoimmune disease. So I definitely am dealing with some chronic health issues that are not related to my lifestyle choices, because I'm pretty careful with my diet and my lifestyle. But when I do these liver flushes with everything that my body is dealing with, I really feel better. And so I try to do them fairly regularly. I'd say at least every 3 weeks to a month, I do one of these liver flushes. Because when your body is dealing with, for instance, the Rocky Mountain spotted fever, well, that's a lot of toxins that the body is dealing with. These bacteria produce a lot of toxins. And all that, your liver has to deal with that. And so it's easy for the liver, sometimes I struggle with nausea because of that. When I do one of these liver flushes, it really relieves a lot of that. So I definitely feel better and have more energy. And other people have also reported the same after they do these liver flushes. As I mentioned earlier, many of these stones are deep within the liver, or the biliary tree, we call it, and they have to be migrated. And so you may do your first liver flush and see nothing, no stones. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't a successful flush, because as I said, these stones are deep within the liver in that biliary tree, and they have to move, they have to migrate. And every time you do one of these flushes, it can push these stones a little bit closer to being eliminated from the biliary tree. Okay, I mentioned here we have safely I've done flushes every 2 to 3 weeks for a couple of months consecutive. And to really ascertain whether or not you're where you need to be as far as eliminating these stones, you want to do these flushes, and then whenever you stop eliminating the stones, if you do 2 or 3 more flushes and you see nothing, you can fairly well rest assured that you may have cleared what you needed to clear from your biliary tree. Now, I think it was in the first part, it may have been the second part of this series, I showed some actual pictures of stones that I took from Andreas Maritz's book, and his book, and I'll mention his book in just a little bit, so I won't go there now. But at any rate, one thing that I have noticed, and I've had a lot of people that I've worked with this flush, is that when you get deeper into these flushes and you start really getting things out from deep in the liver, I have had myself, and I've had other people that I've worked with, had not large stones, but like what looks like sand. And they float on the top of the toilet. It just looks like sand on the top of the toilet. And I believe that these are fully calcified, tiny little stones that have probably been in there for many years. And, you know, I know it's not unique to me because I've had many clients send me pictures and, you know, tell me what they've seen. And even my husband has experienced this as well. Okay, let's talk about the actual flush itself. On the day of the flush, there's some dietary changes that we need to make. On that day, if you need to eat, just eat a very light breakfast, no fats, very little proteins. It's best to just maybe a light salad, a fruit salad, something like that. And if you eat lunch, try to just do a fruit juice, a vegetable juice, or just some fruit or something like that, and drink lots of water. We'll talk about that more in just a little bit. Now, if you approach, you know, if you have problems with constipation particularly, you need to make sure that your bowels are open. You may need to take something for, you know, the week or whatever before to make sure that you're having regular bowel movements every day. And what is regular? One a day is not regular. One a day can actually mean constipation. We need to be, if we're eating 2 meals a day, we need to be having 2 bowel movements a day. If we're eating 3 meals a day, we need to have 3 bowel movements a day. If you approach the end of this day, the actual day when you're going to do the flush, when you're eating this light food, if you, let's say, by 3 or 4 o'clock, you've not had a bowel movement for the day, you really need to do a clear water enema just to kind of clear the way and get the bowels opened up, so that, as we see in this, the actual preparation can move forward. Okay, so here's what we do, and I'm gonna explain this. I have a little video clip that I'm gonna insert. The last time I actually did a flush, I videoed my preparation of that, and I'm going to insert this so that I can actually walk you through what you need to do. So here's the flush prep. If you want to take a screenshot of this, you might want to take a minute and just take a screenshot. So you're going to need a quart jar, and you're going to use grapefruit or orange juice. I prefer grapefruit juice, and I believe that grapefruit juice has a more powerful effect on the bile ducts, a more powerful dilating effect on the bile ducts. So I use grapefruit juice. I don't really like the taste of orange juice in it, but some people do. Some people prefer the orange juice. My mother prefers the orange juice. So you're going to take that quart jar of good, clean, preferably organic juice. A lot of people prefer to fresh squeeze it, but it's hard for us to even find organic grapefruits, let alone, you know, fresh squeeze it. And then to that, you want to add 4 tablespoons of food-grade Epsom salts. And what do I mean by food-grade? Well, even Walmart carries food-grade Epsom salts. What you want to do is make sure that it doesn't have, like, lavender scent or some exotic scent. Just plain old magnesium sulfate Epsom salt. No additives. Okay, that's what you need. Now that mixture, that 1 quart mixture that you're going to do, that's going to be divided into 4 doses. So there'll be 4 1-cup doses, okay? So that's 4 doses. Dose 1 is taken at 5 p.m., dose 2 is at 7 p.m., and the remaining 2 are the following morning. Okay, be sure to stay home when you do this. Now, each time that you take this 1 cup of Epsom and juice mixture, it's best if you take that and drink at least as much water as you did the juice mixture. So at least the 1 cup juice mixture and an additional cup of water, and I like to drink at least 12 to 16 ounces of water. So, you know, 1.5 to 2 cups for me. Now, why do I say that? The reason for that is often if we're a little bit dehydrated and if we're magnesium deficient, sometimes I take, let me just show you, I have it right here. I take this Remag on a daily basis. This is my magnesium supplement. I find that it works very well, and when I do the actual liver flush, I actually take an extra dose of this during the day with a lot of water. And the reason I do that is because most of us are magnesium deficient. Even if you're taking supplementation, even if you're growing your own food and eating lots of greens and stuff, most people don't get enough magnesium. And so sometimes when you drink these doses of the juice and Epsom mixture, your body wants to hang on to that magnesium, some of it. And so if you take more water, because magnesium is a very water-hungry molecule, it helps it to be retained in the bowel instead of being absorbed in the body. And what I have found is that for me personally, if I don't drink extra water when I'm doing this, then I end up the next day, I'll just, my bowels won't even start. I've always had trouble with my bowels moving on a regular basis. I have to be very careful with that. And so I tend to want to just bloat up, and then nothing happens until I drink a whole lot of water. So I've just started drinking extra water when I do it, and it has made it so much easier. And so I just encourage you, when you do this, to drink more water than you typically do. And so I'll emphasize that throughout the talk. Now, why do we use the Epsom salt? That's, you know, I just put this slide in here because I was thinking about it, and I thought, I don't think I really have explained clearly why we use the Epsom salt. Well, it's not just to increase bowel movements and flush out, you know, the stones that are flushed from the liver, but it's because the Epsom salt actually has a relaxing, dilating effect on these bile ducts, so that when you drink the oil mixture, and that causes the liver to produce all this bile, and it causes the gallbladder, and I am going to address if you don't have a gallbladder, so stay with me. But when you drink the oil and all, you know, this bile is pushing, trying to get the bile out and emulsify all that oil and stuff. When that's going to move stones, that action. And then if you've taken the Epsom salts, the grapefruit juice, the tangerine essential oil and all that to dilate and relax those ducts, then as the liver flushes with that bile and pushes that bile out, we make about a quart of bile a day, and this increases that bile production. Then it pushes those stones along more readily when those bile ducts are dilated like that. So that's why we take the Epsom salt. Now here is, in this slide, you can see the oil juice mixture. Now I'm kind of a small, I didn't realize how little I was until I watched myself standing next to a friend of ours on a video recently, and he's actually a little shorter than my husband, and I thought, I'm kind of little. And so I don't think little, I think big, so I don't think about that. But I weigh a little less than 100 pounds, and so what I do, as you can see here in this slide, I personally use between 1/4 and 1/3 cup of olive oil. And that seems to kind of be my sweet spot. I put maybe 1/4 cup plus maybe a tablespoon, maybe a shy tablespoon of oil, and that works very well for me. And then I put an equal amount of juice in that, sometimes a little bit more juice, because it's a little rough drinking the olive oil. I mean, you can do it, it's not that bad. Now my husband, he's almost twice my size. He weighs around 170, so he gets between 1/3 and 1/2 cup. Kind of the same thing, a shy 1/2 cup, maybe 1/3 cup plus a tablespoon-ish. So it's not rocket science. But this is just going to give you a good idea of how much to use. And again, at least as much juice as you have for the oil. Again, putting that juice in with that oil, you're dilating those bile ducts, and it makes it more palatable. Nobody wants to just drink oil. Okay, here's some helpful hints. Be sure you stay home. Okay, If you have not had, and I'm going to reemphasize this, if you've not had a bowel movement by the time it's time to drink that oil, or even, really even the first dose of Epsom salt, you really need to do a clear water enema to get that stool out and make sure that the colon is clean and prepared for this flush. I mean, think about the funnel. You know, a funnel down here in the bottom, if that gets plugged up and you're trying to push more stuff in, it's just going to overflow. And so if your colon is plugged up and you're trying to flush stones out, ain't going to work. So you need to make sure that the colon is cleaned out. Okay, after you have drunk the oil and juice mixture, you really need to go to bed, lie on your right side, and if you can, slightly elevate your shoulders, even up on a pillow should be sufficient. And that helps that oil to empty, you know, a lot faster from your stomach. What I like to do is I get my oil and juice mixture ready, and then I take it to the bathroom and I fix my toothbrush. I shake that up, take a deep breath, I drink it down fast, and then I immediately brush my teeth. Now we have some, doTERRA makes some lozenges out that have essential oils in them and stuff, and then my mom sells Melaleuca, and Melaleuca makes a chewing gum that has xylitol in it. And sometimes I'll get a piece of that chewing gum because if you burp and you taste the oil, it's really yucky. So I'll suck on, you know, one of those lozenges or put a piece of that chewing gum in my mouth for a little bit just to take away that yucky taste, because you can taste it even after you brush your teeth. But you may not need to do that. You may be fine with it, you know, and that's more power to you if you can do that. That's good. But I'm just giving you some things that help to ameliorate the taste and the effect of, you know, maybe belching the oil or whatever. Now, after you drink this oil mixture, do not drink any more water for at least a couple of hours. Now, if you need to get up and use the toilet, if the Epsom's starting to work on you, that's fine, but go back and lie down and rest. The reason we do this liver flush at night is because at night is when the liver does its house cleaning, its autophagy. And really, it only fully enters into that state of autophagy or self-cleaning. Autophagy really means self-eating. You know, it's when the liver begins to clean out the dead cells and all this stuff. So when we do the liver flush at night, we're actually cooperating with what the liver's trying to do anyway. And so it's more effective if we do this at night. So now what I want to do is I want to just show you a little clip that, see, I've explained to you how to do this, but now I'm going to show you how to do it, and then we're going to come back and talk about it. So let me show you this little short clip of when I actually did my last liver flush. Okay, so I am going to be doing a liver flush later on today. I have been preparing for it, and I've talked in other parts about how to actually prepare. But I want to show you what I actually do to mix this up. Now, I am a small person. I weigh around 100 pounds. I know that some people use a half a cup of olive oil, but I feel as though that's a bit much for someone my size. So I tend to lean more towards somewhere between a quarter and a third of a cup of oil. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix my oil mixture in the small jar and my Epsom salt mixture in the quart jar, because I'm going to need almost a quart of the Epsom salt and juice mixture. So I just use an Epsom salt that I found at Walmart. The Equate brand works fine. Just make sure it doesn't have you know, additives in it like lavender or something like that. Just make sure it's just pure food grade magnesium sulfate Epsom salt. I also add a couple of drops of tangerine oil to my Epsom salt mixture, and you can put a drop in the oil mixture as well. You can also put a little bit of tincture of wormwood, black walnut hull, and clove in your oil mixture and take that at the same time. And I may do that. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to do that, but what I would do is just put a half a dropper full of that tincture in the oil mixture, and that will help, for instance, if there's any kind of parasites blocking the bile ducts or anything. Now, the purpose of the Epsom salt is it helps to open up those bile ducts, and it also increases gastric motility, so it helps to clear out any stones. So the reason that I add the tangerine oil is because tangerine tends to have an effect on the bile ducts as well, a dilating effect, and also grapefruit juice has that same effect. So let me show you what I do. It's going to be a little noisy here as I dip into the bag. I put 4 tablespoons of Epsom salt in a large jar. There's some chunks and stuff in there, so it's not rocket science. It doesn't have to be exact, but you want about 4 tablespoons. And the bigger the person is, you want to make sure that you're not shy. See, this tablespoon is just a little shy. For me, that's okay, because like I said, I'm a small person. So, and then I will just pretty much fill this up the rest of the way with my grapefruit juice and mix that up. That will be divided into 4 doses. We'll talk about that in just a minute, but let me show you what I do for the oil mixture. So as I said, I'm not a large person. This is open and ready to go. This is a 1/3 cup measurer, so I'm going to fill it almost full, and that will be the extra virgin olive oil that I need. Just shy of a 1/3 cup. Now pour that in here. Okay, and then I'm going to add an equal amount of the grapefruit juice to here. Pretty much equal amount. Get that ready there. Okay, whoops. Okay, so that's pretty much all you need for the oil and juice mixture. You know, you can see the oil and the juice separating. So I'll just cap that and set it aside. Now, right now it's almost 11 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going to drink the first dose of my Epsom mixture around 5 p.m., 5 to 6 p.m., somewhere in there. You want to make sure that your juice and your oil are room temperature when you do that. So I take it out and mix it fairly early, like, you know, it's 11 o'clock. So by the time that I would get ready to actually start drinking my mixtures, it's pretty much room temperature. So I'll go ahead, I'm going to put maybe a couple of drops of the tangerine essential oil in there. I think 3 drops came out, and that's okay. And then I will fill this the rest of the way pretty much full with the grapefruit juice. And then we'll shake that up well. You just need to make sure that you have 4 cups of that. And then again, you're going to divide that into 4 equal doses. And you're going to drink 2 of the doses. Like this evening, I'll drink a cup of this at 5, and then I'll drink a cup of this again around 7 or a little after. And then at bedtime, I'll shake this oil mixture up and drink it. And then I want to lie down on my right side with my shoulders slightly elevated. Up on your pillow is pretty much enough. Now, is it tough to drink the oil? Yeah, it kind of is. It's nasty. But I have these natural lozenges. You can use like a Fisherman's Friend. doTERRA makes a nice lozenge. If you have some natural chewing gum or something that you could put in your mouth to help take away that oil flavor. And then you just want to rest. Don't drink any water after you've drinking the oil mixture for at least an hour. And just lie quietly there on your right side. Now, if you need to go to the bathroom, because this may actually start working on you in the evening. So if you need to get up and go to the bathroom, go to the bathroom. If you need to brush your teeth after you drink this, if that helps you, then that's fine too. but don't drink any water after this. You want that oil. What the oil is, and I'm sure that I've explained it in other areas in the talk, the oil causes the liver, the gallbladder, the bile ducts, all those things to really go into overdrive, and it just flushes and pushes any stones. It kind of helps to move them along. And again, you may do your first liver flush and see no stones and just nothing in your stool. But that doesn't mean they're not there. They have to migrate down through the bile ducts, out of deep in the liver. Sometimes those things can be. And so I have done 2, 3 of these liver flushes and seen very little or nothing. And then the next time I do one, and there's the mother load, just the whole, when you eliminate the whole top of the water in the toilet bowl will be just covered, floating with stones. And so these things have to migrate. It takes time. A liver flush is not just a one-time fixes-it deal. Typically what we do is we do a series of about a dozen of these back-to-back, about 2 to 3 weeks apart. And they're very effective to help clear out the liver. Okay, welcome back. I hope that that was very helpful to you. Again, I want to emphasize, if you have stents in your bile ducts, you cannot do this liver flush. So please, please, I have cautioned you, and I cannot be responsible for anyone's lack of adherence to the cautions that we're sharing here. Okay, here's some important points to remember. If you need more information on this, or if you're a researcher like myself and you want to really dig into this, then I recommend you get a copy of Andreas Moritz's book. I think it's called The Amazing Liver and Gallbladder Flush. And that is a very good book for physiology and anatomy. I do not adhere to his spiritual beliefs. I'm a Christian. He was a New Ager. He's deceased. But that's a very good resource, and his book is where I got probably 75% of the research that I've done and I've kind of adapted his protocol just a little bit, not a lot. I've not changed it much, but at any rate, that's what you can do. You can get his book. We touched on why we do the liver flush at night already. That's here in this slide. Bile is needed for the flush, and that is why we don't eat fats and stuff like that, because when we eat a fatty meal, of course, that requires bile to digest. So when we don't eat a lot of fats and stuff on the day of the flush, that really helps our body to conserve that bile so that it has more to push these stones out. And the coffee enema also increases. And another thing, don't eat a lot of bitter foods the day that you're going to do this, like dandelion greens. Don't drink a big old glass of dandelion tea or any bitter herbs and things like that. These actually, excuse me, can use up, they increase the bile flow. So you want to conserve all of that bile for the actual flush. Now, I am a strong proponent of using those things on a daily basis, but when we're doing the flush, we need to hold off on that so that we can, have that bile for the flush. And again, the coffee enema, which many people do for liver health, that's not something that we want to do on the day that we're doing the flush. We can do that the day after the flush, and we'll touch on that in just a minute. Okay, we can touch on it, I think, in the next slide. Okay, so at 6 a.m., this is the next morning after we've done the flush, it's time for the next dose of Epsom. You can stay out, but we really need to take a few days, and most of us are so wide open these days, it's not going to hurt us to have a couple days to kind of slow down. And use this liver flush as a time to do that, because the day you're actually doing the flush, you're not eating much, the day that you're preparing for the flush, and then the next day, you're spending a lot of time in the bathroom, and so you've not eaten a lot, and so just take that time to rest. Maybe do it on vacation or something. Okay? By 8 a.m., that's the next dose of Epsom and juice. Again, be sure to drink extra water when you do this. And you should be having loose stools by now. If you're not, there's 2 reasons. And I touched on them earlier. You may be magnesium deficient, or you may not be drinking enough water. When early on when I was doing these flushes, I had terrible bloating. I would look like I was 8 months pregnant because all that stuff was just sitting in there. It wouldn't come. And I realized I need more magnesium, I need more water. When I started adding those things, I have no problem anymore. Okay, now I like to do a coffee or a dandelion enema the day after the flush. So you have the preparation day where you're eating light, and then in the evening you're drinking your Epsom and your juice mixture, and then in the evening you drink the oil, and then the next morning you drink 2 doses of the Epsom salt, and then you spend the rest of the day at home because you're going to need to stay close to the bathroom. That, if you have not had a bowel movement and you're having a lot of bloating and gas and drinking the water hasn't helped, that may be a good time to do a water enema, just a water enema. And a lot of times, and I've had to do this, that will kind of get things moving, no pun intended. So you may need to do that. And then the following morning, and this is the 3rd day here, the following morning I like to do either a coffee or dandelion enema to help. And the reason I do those is because both of those have a tendency to dilate the bile ducts a little bit and help relax them a little bit more if there's any stone that maybe just not quite moving along like it needs to. And if there's stones that are left in the intestines, we do not want to leave any of these stones unflushed left in the intestine because they're extremely toxic. If you leave those in there, and I'll be just here, let me show you this next slide. In all honesty, what comes out during the flush reeks. You'll think somebody has crawled up in there and died. And basically it has. I mean, these stones actually contain toxins, bits and pieces of parasites, all kind of junk. Okay, that needs to come out, and it doesn't smell good. And they're very toxic, and you don't want to leave those things sitting in your colon because they can cause some issues. Okay, now eating on the morning after you've drunk the oil, it's best to skip breakfast that morning. If you need something, maybe a vegetable juice or something just to kind of help stabilize your blood sugar if you have problems with that. And then if you, later in the day, if you eat a second meal, again, let it be salad, a juice, fruit salad, something not too heavy, light on the fats and proteins and stuff, because your body's just used up a lot of its bile and it needs time to rest and recuperate. This is basically like having surgery at home. I mean, they actually do surgery to remove some of these things from the body. So just kind of give yourself a break for a little bit. In the days following, you can begin to eat fats and proteins and stuff like that. But again, just remember that, don't go out and do cheese pizza or something because your body's been working pretty hard. So just kind of give a few days to rest. Now, what do I do if I don't have a gallbladder? Can I do the liver flush? Yes, you absolutely can. And I believe personally that it's even more beneficial because you don't have the capacity to concentrate that bile. You have this constant trickle of bile. And I have learned in my research and experience that people can kind of tend to go either way when they don't have a gallbladder. They can either struggle with loose stool and maybe even a little bit of incontinence or constipation. And that just depends on how much bile is actually flowing. If we don't, even those of us who still have our gallbladder, if we don't have good bile flow, we can tend towards constipation. And that's part of my issue. I tend to have sluggish bile flow. And so I have to do things to kind of, eating the bitter greens, taking the lemon, with meals and stuff like that. So when you don't have a gallbladder, then you just have this constant trickle, and that actually can cause more stones to develop in the liver itself. And so it's actually very helpful. Let's see if I missed anything from this slide here. I don't think I did, but you can read this slide yourself. Okay, so let's talk about some other cautions and contraindications for doing the liver flush. People who should not do this. If you have an acute illness, like if you're sick with this virus that's going around these days, I wouldn't do a liver flush. Not a good idea. Okay, if you have the flu or something like that, if you have a fever, whatever, if you have some kind of acute illness going on. If you're extremely underweight, now I'm little, but I'm not underweight. I'm actually almost right on target for my ideal body weight because I have a small bone frame. So if you're taking prescription medications, that can interfere. So you take upon yourself the responsibility to research and see if your medications are going to interfere with this, because when you do the liver flush, it can actually concentrate that medication in your liver, and it can cause some problems. So do your research. Constipation, again, we touched on this. You want to make sure that the bowels are open first before you do this. If you're pregnant or nursing, you should not do a liver flush. Diabetics should be very cautious, and I think we touched on that a little bit earlier. Again, if you have bile duct stents, do not do this liver flush. And if you have significant heart arrhythmias, probably not a good idea to do this. So here's the rundown. If you want to take a screenshot of this, this actually gives you, kind of in a nutshell, everything that you need. The malic acid we take, if you choose to do apple juice, tart cherry juice, whatever, that's fine. You drink that, and I think some people actually do that exclusively. They just do a week-long juice fast of just these juices. But we like to do the malic acid. We find that it's extremely effective. And then you'll need the food-grade Epsom, the grapefruit juice. That's going to be divided into 4 doses. You need 1/4 to 1/2 cup of good quality extra virgin olive oil. Now, if you can't use extra virgin olive oil, you can use a seed oil or an almond oil or something like that. But extra virgin olive oil is what I prefer, and I seem to do well with that. And then, of course, the grapefruit juice. You can add a drop of tangerine essential oil, as I showed in the little video clip. That actually helps the bile ducts to open even better. And you can also add to the oil mixture a 1/2 dropper of some kind of parasite thing. This black walnut and wormwood. You could add a 1/2 dropper of something like that. And that puts the whammy on the parasites because it gets it right where they're at when the ducts are dilated. Okay, I like to do the parasite detox before I do this, and I talk about that in other videos, and I think I talked about it in the video previous to this. That's because of my personal experience. You can go watch that video and I explain why. Okay, again, here's the schedule. 5 p.m. Epsom and salt mixture, 7 p.m. repeat that, 9 p.m. the oil and juice mixture. The next morning at 6 a.m. the Epsom and juice, 8 a.m. Epsom and juice, and then if you're not eliminating by early afternoon or evening, do a warm water enema and get those stones moving. And then the following day, I definitely like to do dandelion coffee or even just a water enema to help get those stones out, because a lot of times on that 3rd day of the flush, or the day after you've actually been eliminating the stones, it's often difficult to get your bowels to move for a day or so because nothing in there. So if you will do that enema, it helps to flush out any residual stones that are in there. Okay, just by way of reminder, stay home when you do this. We'll see you on the next video.